To South Africa now, where there are growing calls for reform after police shot and killed a teenager with Down syndrome. Debora Patta takes a closer look at the case in Johannesburg, where there's a major push for changes across the country.
The scenes are all too familiar. Anguish as yet another young child is carried in a coffin, shot dead by the police. Outrage as community anger erupts into protests, met with clouds of tear gas and officers in riot gear. The makeshift shrines that burst up overnight, the graffiti urging people not to forget. Only this killing was not in Minneapolis or Ferguson, but in South Africa. It happened in El Dorado Park, just outside Johannesburg, where distrust of law enforcement mirrors the US. Only here, both the victim and the perpetrator were black.
How can people do this to a boy? It could be any child. Why is an adult doing all of those things?
Bridget Harris's son, Nathaniel Julius, may have been 16 years old, but he looked a lot younger. The teen had Down syndrome, which had severely affected his ability to speak properly. But what he was unable to express in words, he made up for in movement. Nathaniel sure loved to dance.
When you put on your music, he was there. He's dancing for you the whole day, as long as you just have biscuits and something to eat.
And it was his love of biscuits that saw him pop out to the shop next door to buy a packet of cookies after supper one night in late August. Harris was worried when her son was not back by the 9 p.m. pandemic curfew. The next thing she heard was a gunshot.
They just shot him in cold blood. The reason for that, they don't even want to give us the reasons. All that I know, they killed him like a dog.
Not even a warning shot was fired when the confused boy was unable to answer police questions. Nathaniel Julius was shot here right next to this broken down truck, just a few feet away from his family home. The severely disabled teenager was holding a cookie at the time when an officer shot him in the chest. 3 officers are in jail facing charges of murder and obstruction of justice. In a sad irony, it was a mixed-race police woman who fired the fatal shot. She claims she thought the gun was loaded with rubber bullets and not live ammunition. None of the officers have attempted to explain why they were shooting at a young disabled boy in the first place. In addition to the court case, there is an internal investigation.
We can't continue to have police officers who are behaving like this, killing people randomly, and we just not going to accept people who are police officers who are trigger happy at the same time.
But it's not so simple. While the police are mostly black in South Africa and elsewhere on the continent, that doesn't mean the police force has been transformed.
We share a lot of the same problems as America in that our police are poorly trained and their mandate is to target and essentially harass certain communities instead of protecting them.
Wayne Lube says marginalized and poor communities are always at the receiving end of police brutality, particularly in countries where law enforcement protects the interests of the ruling elite, regardless of whether they are black or white.
Their approach towards the community is essentially to lord over them instead of being a community resource. And once you're not a community resource, and you have authority over people, and you have no accountability structures, and you have no training, you then create the environment where bad people will do bad things with that power.
The authorities have vowed to make an example of the officers charged with taking Nathaniel's life. It's of little comfort to his mother.
Even sometimes when I'm alone, I miss my boy. I just want him to run through the gates. You know, laughing. I'm missing his laughter and all of that.
There's not much laughter in El Dorado Park these days. Nathaniel Julius is the face the community remembers when police ride by, and it is a face of fear. Debora Patta, CBS News, Johannesburg, South Africa.